everybody. It's Heather with the Leadership with Heart podcast. And today I'm very excited. I have Steve Baines on with me. And okay, those who listen all the time know that sometimes I handpick people like from LinkedIn or from other places. And sometimes folks either come referred to me from you all listening or someone will just I call it a pitch, but they'll say, this person, I think they'd be really good for your show. And I've listened to this. And in this case, it was that way with Steve. And I thought there was just some unique things about his background and the work that he did. And I thought, I want to find out why the leadership with Heart side and the connection to the work he does, which is so unique. I don't think I've ever interviewed anyone that's kind of has the background. So I'm excited for you to meet Steve. So welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So tell the listeners, where are you right now in your leadership journey?
Boy, I'll tell you, I just celebrated my 50th birthday a month ago. So I'm certainly on the latter half of my career from a leadership perspective. Where I'm at is the company I work for, Apps Associates, just recently acquired my company, Forcivity. I was the CEO of that company prior to joining forces with my partner, Jeff Austin, and then I then turned the reins over to him. I think that's probably where I was most recently. I would call it on my management journey, not necessarily my leadership journey, because I definitely separate the two. Where I'm at in my leadership journey is I still have a lot to learn. This has been quite an experience going through. I've gone through a few mergers now, a few acquisitions, and I learned something every time. I've made the same mistake a couple times. I've improved on some things, done worse on other things, but it's always a learning journey for me. And this is just the most recent example of that.
I love the honesty, number one. I mean, that already says a lot that you're just like, oh, I'm not getting this right. I'm not all the time. I'm trying to do this right. And that's I haven't had my company acquired, but I've been in the throes of reorgs and mergers and private equity and just the entire gamut. I don't know, what is the most eye-opening part of that process for you? And I'd love to share mine too after you.
So integrating two companies is very hard to do. Acquiring and merging companies is the simple part, the paperwork and all those things. It's actually integrating companies together. I will tell you that this one in particular has been extremely eye-opening for me, just because of all the human dynamics, interpersonal relationships, personalities, what's my job title, who am I going to work for? There's been a lot of that. And as a leader, that people are looking to us to lead, to set the direction, and they're looking to us for stability and certainty and predictability. And while I knew that to be true, kind of going into this exercise, I've never really experienced it to the level that I have with this acquisition.
Yeah, that is exactly how you describe that, and you did it in a sensitive way. I think about the merger that I was in, this merger of 5 companies, and it was like all tech companies except for one company that they were trying to convert to this tech type of company. And I remember all the fear and the anxiety. And I remember, as you were talking about, well, what's my title? Who am I going to report to? I remember probably before this, a big layoff happened and the merger kind of came to a head and then an explosion in a way. There was a point where they had this internal Facebook. It was actually Facebook. I forgot what they call it, like Facebook Workplace, something with Facebook.
Oh yeah.
And I remember, and it was fairly new for the organization I was working. So one of the 5 companies, and I went on there one day, and somebody had given my job away. It was given away, and the person was like, oh yeah, it's so exciting, I'm in this new role. And I'm like,
hey, that's my job.
So I totally get what you're talking about with what's your title, who I'm reporting, because there's so much fear inside those environments. And I always find that it's so hard because there's this balance that you have to play where you're like, I can only say so much, I can't say too much, I can't you're it's like a teeter-totter. You're just trying hard to not say a little bit but not too much because of messing things up and everything. But in the process, we have no clue psychologically what we're doing to the people, the troops that are running the business.
Though not a clue. I could not agree with you more on that. I mean, and I'm a very open person. I'm a very talkative person. I like to share. I like folks to know what's going on. And I would say even just, going through Forcivity and now Apps Associates, just that leadership journey alone has been very eye-opening for me as at one point the CEO, and then working side by side with the CEO, is that every word that comes out of your mouth matters. Every action that you take matters. How you write an email matters. Everything matters. And your word sometimes is taken as gospel. And so you have to be very mindful about what you say, because you may just be talking, brainstorming, ideating on something, and people take that as law, the directive, like, let's go, we're going to do this. I'm like, I didn't quite mean that. It's just an idea. So for me personally, it's been a journey, and learning how to be a leader from that perspective, and being very mindful of how you're perceived in the rest of the organization, and that folks are looking to you to lead. And it's not about just passing out orders and say, do this and do this. It's setting the direction that people can get behind and believe in. And yeah, I'm sure you've heard the phrase, you want people to follow you when you're charging up the hill. And the one thing you don't want is to charge halfway up the hill and look behind you and have nobody there, or just a couple people there.
Yeah, that would not be a good thing to do. And I'm curious to know where does your drive to lead come from?
Well, Molly's heard me say this story many times. My colleague Molly is listening to this podcast right now. When I first left high school, I wanted to be a doctor. And even though I didn't have a desire at that time to manage people or manage a team, I very much felt this drive to be a person that people could look to for help. I need something. Can you help provide it for me? And, if I kind of peel back everything that I've done in my career, things that I've really enjoyed doing and things that I don't enjoy doing so much, the one thing that really gets me going is when I have the opportunity to help people. And it's not necessarily about helping the masses. It's almost like just these micro scenarios where, oh, you've got a question, I've got an answer, or have you thought about this, or have you thought about that, or don't try that, don't do that, because I've done that before and I've gotten burned on that.
That's awesome. I think that's, just that I always like to ask people where that drive to lead comes from, because sometimes it's like, you're thinking it's one thing and you're curious about where, and then all of a sudden like, you hear another story and you're like, wow, I don't know. I feel like I'm a sociologist or like a psychologist. Sometimes I'm always going to go deeper. Like what exactly is that about? So the folks that are on your team that have been on your team in the past, how would they describe your leadership style? I'm curious.
So my hope is that they would describe me as a servant leader. And I try to espouse that value every day. I'm not a leader who just gives orders from the mountaintop and expects folks to do. I was in the military, 25, 30 years ago, I was in the military, and the military is not a servant leader structure by any means whatsoever. And I tried to make it that way. When I had folks that were working for me, I tried to structure things in such a way that I wouldn't ask anybody to do anything that I wouldn't do myself. And I've kind of carried that forward throughout my entire career. And my hope is that when folks look back on how I was as a leader, that would be one of the things they would think of first is, he was always willing to roll up his sleeves and help, and just help make it happen.
I love that. I get that a lot. People do say that. And this idea of like being in the trenches and, the marching along. And I bet you when you look back, when you're looking back and you're charging up that mountain, people are right exactly there with you, just because of what you just described. I mean, if you go into the relationship with service, it's always going to pay off that way because they know it, they can sniff it out.
Yeah, absolutely. They can. And, folks know when they're dealing with a fraudulent leader. They know when they're dealing with a genuine leader. They can tell immediately. And I try to be very, very self-aware of my personal interactions with everybody, and know that when they're meeting with me, they're looking for guidance. They're looking for leadership. Sometimes they're just looking for an ear to listen. I had a meeting with a woman yesterday who used to be on my team, who no longer isn't, but it was a check-in. It was a consultation. It was, hey, what do you think about the scenario? And that's what she needed from me at the time. So, even though I'm not her manager, it was still an opportunity for me to lead.
I think that's important because if you think about it, I think people who don't have titles don't understand how many opportunities there are to lead. And then those with titles take for granted the very obvious opportunity they have. But I think those that look at it with more modesty and humility, and I think it's the accessibility of us to others that makes such a huge difference. And they know it and they sniff it out. There's just more opportunities for success. That's probably why you have the success you do in business.
Absolutely.
So I can really appreciate that. So I am curious, for those who are listening right now, can you think of a time when it could be like through this whole merger acquisition thing or later, some other time in your career where you weren't that caring leader with heart, the one that showed up with that kind of servant mentality? What did that look like specifically? And what did you do to come out of it and become more enlightened? And I say enlightened because it's not about perfection. It's just this journey we're on and we get like better every day. What did you do to come out of that, whatever that story, that specific scenario was, and just to kind of become more enlightened?
Well, that scenario was COVID, like everybody. It was COVID. So running the business, coming into 2020, I'm sure like everybody, we were going gangbusters. We had big plans. We were going to conquer the world. And then COVID hit. And at the time, I think the world felt it was going to be very temporary. So that's very much how I approached it. It's like, we're just going to weather the storm. And as the weeks and months progressed and the future looked very, very uncertain for the economy, for the world, and for my business, I really had to evaluate myself as a leader and have a conversation and say, okay, what should I be doing at this point? How should I be leading this business through these individuals, these folks who are depending on this company for a paycheck to feed their family? And how can I provide them certainty and stability, but not feed them a line of BS either, and be patronizing and say everything's going to be okay? Because I didn't know. And they knew I didn't know. They didn't know. So I fortunately was able to be very open and honest with my team and say, hey, listen, this is where I'm at. This is where we're at as a company. We're going to succeed or fail as a team here. So let's just rally around each other and do that. And I learned a lot about myself. I learned a lot about what motivates people, what doesn't motivate people, what people will believe in, what people won't believe in. And they don't teach you that in business school. There's no book on that. And I know I'm not the only one who went through this as a business leader. You were making it up. I was making it up every day as far as what I should do here. What was the best move to make?
Yeah, the whole flexibility. We thought we had to be flexible before, like, we had to be really flexible in our thinking this last couple of years. Actually, today I saw some posts and I didn't really realize it, but today is 2 years from George Floyd. Out on the dot. And the reason why it's like kind of weird for me because my son's birthday is today. And so then I was like, well, there's a thing that just happened yesterday. There's all these things that are happening, the shootings in Texas. And then it's like, there's all these things to kind of reflect on and think about where we've come in the last couple of years, even how I've personally changed in the last couple of years. And then there's like, how much do we focus forward? Because in order to get through it, like we had to have gotten really resilient and learned to focus forward on some bigger things so that the distractions that are vast around us, some of them are life and death distractions, won't really completely derail us. I'm curious to know, do you feel like you as a leader and maybe even your team became more resilient during this time?
There's no doubt. I mean, and I think that, with us recently going through this acquisition and a merger last year, I think that's the testament to our resilience. I will tell you, I knew this, but COVID proved it to me that the team that I had and continue to work with, they're amazing people. And I have always operated on the assumption that work is an interruption of somebody's life, not the other way around. Meaning, yes, you happen to go someplace for 8-9 hours a day to earn a paycheck, but the reality is that that's a relatively small portion of your life. And going through COVID with the team and suddenly being a remote workforce, And knowing that they were cooking and teaching and working and trying to pay their bills and be on a conference call with your kid right here, telling them that they lost their homework or they can't connect on their Zoom for their class. It was eye-opening as to how resilient and how dedicated everybody was through it.
Mm.
And my hope is that I had a teensy weensy bit to do with that, just me as their leader. But the 99.999% of the credit goes to all of them for just being who they are and just sticking to what we were doing and believing and getting all of us through it collectively. That was not an individual effort by any means.
Well, kudos to you for that. Well, you obviously belong here on this show with that kind of heart. So whoever found you and introduced you, I can't remember what it was, but they were spot on. So that's good. And I'm glad my intuition said, yes, bring them on. Because, not everybody sees things that way. And I don't know. I was just saying the other day, I was talking to this new marketing firm because we're just doing some different things on the consulting side of my business. And I said to myself, listen, I learned, I'm not going to say exactly when, because I don't want to give it away, but I learned that I don't want certain clients.
Yes.
And so I don't want clients who aren't completely bought into what it means to have an inspired employee journey. And bought into really what listening means for team members and what it feels like for someone to take action on your voice. And if they're not bought in that from the beginning, I don't want them. I don't care less how much money it is. I don't. If they have to be bought in. So that's literally when we do our marketing, whatever that means, do not bring anybody to me that does not have an intent to change or transform, right?
Absolutely. And like you said earlier, I mean, people sniff that out. If you're non-genuine about it, you get made very, very quickly. And your effectiveness plummets instantly. Your credibility disappears, your respect disappears. And I'm very much about respect is earned, not given. And people are looking to you. And if you're not, I whenever I'm interacting with anybody, I want to make it so they know that this is about you. This is not about me. This is about what you need, what I can provide to you, what answers I can give to you, what solutions, what guidance I can give you. And I want them to know that when they come to me, that they know they're going to get what they need, that it's just not going to be an empty suit listening.
Absolutely. And the work we do in the whole listening space, it requires so much trust because we go in and basically curate a safe space where most organizations don't have that because their people don't trust them. So we create that space kind of out externally, right? For them to get to the truth of the matter. So Absolutely. That trust thing is very important. I'll be like, I am not giving away my reputation with your team members who trust me. And I told them we're going to do something because you're not. And so this will be the last time I interact with you. You know what I mean? I'm not doing that. So, it's true. It's so true. It's funny what we value. I value so many different things. I think right in the beginning of the pandemic, all of our stuff was so human centric, right? Like we would be at meetings or go do training or be on stages so that there'd be interactions with live people. And then of course, everything went away for those first few months. And then of course you're taking in, from my perspective and in my industry, you're taking whatever comes your way.
Right.
And then again, so then there's an evolution that took place. Of course, all of our values have been realigned during the pandemic, and what we all value individually is so different than what it was before. And then from a business perspective, what we value is so different. So it's just funny, the shifting priorities and the things that we take to heart are just different,
I will tell you, I didn't realize how much I valued person-to-person interactions until the pandemic hit. I'm a very social person. You can plunk me down in the middle of a room of 1,000 people and I'm very comfortable. But I thrive in one-to-one situations. Mm-hmm. And having that taken away from me was very eye-opening. And I had to reinvent myself. I had to relearn how to engage with folks. Now, of course, being on a Zoom is a very natural thing for all of us. So we've all become accustomed to it, but it still gets me all jazzed up to be able to go meet with folks and be in a room and be in front of a whiteboard or having coffee or having lunch.
So now, Steve, you get to turn the tables and be kind of like a podcast host. So you get to ask me now any question that you have of me. Knowing now kind of my background, what would you like to ask me?
I'll ask you first, why do you do what you do? What got you into this?
I think it was, to be honest, I'm going to say this is just terrible to say, but this is just the simplest way I can say it. Working for a lot of idiots, mm-hmm. People who just didn't get it. those who really weren't fully focused on service or serving other people. And so I got to the point where I was like, this is just not going to work for me. I can't keep working for people who aren't really aligned in their values, don't show congruency with what they say they value. And I wanted to create a better experience because I could see all the pain around me and the employees' faces. I could sense it. They would tell me there was confusion, all the things we talked about between mergers and reorgs and all of them. And I said, someone has got to do something to share the voice of the people to the people that actually can do something about that experience. And that's voila, how I got into the work that I do now.
And I mean, do you find that your message resonates with most folks, or is there resistance? I mean, I'm just curious, when you're out there just, doing your thing, what do people say? How do they react?
It does resonate. It resonates because, I mean, I'm on stages, I have books on caring leadership and employee loyalty. And then I just give them nuggets here and there. And I think the key is, I think the folks, the organizations that work with employee fanatics, they know there's an issue and that they don't have the answer and they have to get to the bottom of things. And that's why they come to us, because we help them get to the bottom, find the truth for their organization, and then help them along the journey to kind of creating a better experience for people so that people want to stay. So they're not just running out the door. So I do think that it resonates. It resonates for very specific type of people. Like I said, if you're not in it to win it, you're not in it for the long haul, you're not in it to work with us. It's not a one and done type of thing.
So what did you want to do when you went to college? How far off are you here?
I'm really far off. Yeah. I went to law school. I'm a licensed attorney. I just don't practice anymore. So I'm very far off. The only thing I would say is that when I was in law school, the one area of law that always intrigued me was employer-employee relations. The power dynamic between the two is so intriguing to me. So if I were to ever go back to practice, it'd be like employment law or something, but probably not, because I'd be broke because I'd want to represent the employees.
Yeah, well, you're talking to somebody who has a degree in accounting who's never used it.
Yeah, exactly. So, yep, there you go. That's okay though. I think we're all on a journey. We land where we're supposed to land.
Absolutely.
Right? Yes. That's a great question. So for those who are listening right now, who may be like, oh, they're at a crossroads in their leadership, or they just need some extra motivation, or they want like a nugget, particularly from someone like you, I'd love to hear what might be a pearl of wisdom or two you would leave the listeners with.
Find a mentor. I mean, I think that was the best advice I was ever given. It was probably maybe 20 years ago or so. And I ended up connecting with the right person at the right time who gave me such amazing advice. He happened to be my supervisor at the time, and he gave me free rein. He put the leash on me when he needed to. He protected me when he needed to. He put me out in the forefront when he needed to. And I continue to speak with him to this day. He's one of my closest friends. And if he listens to this, I'm going to jokingly say he might be old enough to be my father, or pretty close. But it's just been a fantastic journey for me. And I was very fortunate to connect with that type of person. So my advice would be reach out to your network, try to find like-minded folks, look for folks who can guide. Maybe just starting as, a social connection and chatting and networking, and see how that relationship evolves. But having that guidance, that experience has been invaluable for me. It's impossible to do this alone. If you've got any aspirations to be a leader, trying to lead without any type of guidance, whether it's formal education or networking with other leaders, it's almost impossible.
So true. Mentorship is so darn important in this process, and having that support network, that support system is invaluable. And I'm so glad I had you on here. I think we could talk for hours. Oh my gosh, so much warmth, and I love that servant mentality. So for those who are listening, if you took away a lot of really good nuggets from my conversation with Steve, please do share them far and wide, and don't forget to go on Apple Podcast and write the 5-star review. That helps the algorithm and helps with people getting getting access to this content, really learning some of the nuggets and hearing the heart, and hopefully taking on some of the heart of the matter with leadership. Thank you so much, Steve. It's really been a pleasure having you on here.
Thank you, Heather. Appreciate you having me.
And thanks everybody for listening to the Leadership of the Heart podcast.